This is the 5-minute guide to the USS Stewart, a Clemson-class destroyer of the United States Navy, and the Imperial Japanese Navy, and then the United States Navy again. It's another one of those fun ships.
Okay, and now we're going to try something slightly different. A number of users have been asking me to ditch the robot voice, so given that this is a special video, I thought I'd try it in my actual voice, see what you think, and then we can move on with further guides from here. So, the USS Stewart started life as a perfectly normal Clemson-class destroyer, named after an American Rear Admiral and launched in 1920. But the unusual career began shortly thereafter as she joined the Atlantic Fleet in 1921, but after a couple of years of service there, she was sent on an incredibly long journey across the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean, down the Suez Canal, into the Indian Ocean, before finally winding up in the Philippines, assigned to the Asiatic Fleet. At this point, she would not return to the United States for another 23 years. So initially, her life over there was a bit routine, cruising back and forth to China, a little bit of a diversion in September 1923 to Japan to help the victims of the Great Kanto earthquake, and she was also part of the American naval force that supported the flight of 4 Army aircraft that were attempting a round-the-world flight. She supported those aircraft at Japan and Shanghai. But by 1924 there was increasing anti-foreign sentiment in China, and she spent most of the rest of the interwar years either taking Marines to China, protecting civilians in China, or patrolling the river and coastal waterways as a show of strength. After the Japanese-Chinese War broke out, she guarded American interests there before war broke out in Europe, at which point she was recalled to the Philippines for a refit. As it began to look more and more like America would be drawn into the war, she was ordered, along with most of the rest of the Asiatic Fleet, to the Dutch East Indies. Now, when America initially entered the Second World War, the Stewart was assigned to take up escort duty alongside the cruisers Boys and Marblehead. Going into 1942, the Marblehead and the Stewart set out to attack Japanese forces, but unfortunately the Marblehead was badly damaged by aircraft and forced to retreat. Thereafter, the Stewart was assigned to the American, British, Dutch, and Australian command and appeared to regain a bit of a streak of luck. She avoided a reef that had made the Dutch destroyer ahead of her run aground, and then dodged numerous air attacks without much damage. Unfortunately, that luck ran out at the Battle of Badung Strait, where she was hit repeatedly by Japanese destroyers who exploited the early war advantage that they had in night fighting to quite devastating effects. She lost her boats, torpedo racks, and galley, and it was very lucky the torpedoes in those racks didn't explode, as that kind of hit doomed quite a few ships on both sides. However, it was a hit to the stern below the waterline that did the most damage because this opened up major leaks. Although one of the engine rooms was in 2 feet of water, believe it or not, the ship actually managed to make it back to harbour, where, being the most damaged ship that actually survived, she was allowed to enter the floating dry dock first. Unfortunately, her run of bad luck didn't end there. She wasn't properly supported in the dock, and therefore as it rose, the ship actually fell over onto its side, which caused further hull damage and bent all the drive shafts. With the Japanese advancing, there wasn't exactly much that could be done, and between a Japanese bomb hit, extra demolition charges, and people scuttling the dry dock itself, she was considered pretty much gone. Shortly thereafter, an Edsall-class destroyer escort was given the name Stewart, and the ship was stricken from the Navy Register. But of course, the story doesn't end there. Now, over a year later, American pilots began reporting something rather strange, because there appeared to be an American warship operating deep behind enemy lines. Now, the funnel arrangement was noted as a little bit odd, but the ship was definitely a flush-deck destroyer. As it turned out, about a year after her sinking, the Stewart had been raised by the Japanese and commissioned into the Imperial Japanese Navy as patrol boat number 102. She was now armed with a pair of 3-inch guns and used as an escort, operating with the submarine hunter DD-224 at a time when that ship sank the famous and successful US submarine, the USS Harder. In late 1944, the ship was repaired further and given a more extensive light anti-aircraft battery, but this did not prevent her from being bombed by American aircraft while she was in harbour in occupied Korea. After a limping voyage to Japan, she was laid up, which was where American occupation forces found her in August 1945. Since her name had been passed to another ship, she couldn't simply be brought back into service with her original title, otherwise you'd have 2 USS Stewarts wandering around. So instead, in October 1945, she was commissioned back into the United States Navy using her serial number DD-224. As she returned home, the engines finally stopped working somewhere near Guam, and she arrived off the Californian coast in March 1946 under tow. She was then decommissioned again and used as a target for aircraft, but even then, she proved to be a remarkably difficult ship to put down. 18 rockets and several thousand rounds of machine gun ammunition later, and she was still afloat. Eventually, another American ship had to hit her with a barrage of 40mm and 3-inch shells, which finally sent her to the bottom. So now you know what I sound like, and you know what our regular text-to-speech mechanical voice sounds like. So let us know in the comments below which one you'd like. Maybe you want to hear me in all the guides, maybe you want me just to do the specials and the regular voice to do the regular guides. Who knows? Well, that's what your vote counts for, so let us know in the comments below. And with that said,
that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below.